Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am the Sipping Tea, and today I'd like to talk to you all about the Cold War Era 3 M1A2 Abrams. Briefly, however, before I get into that, I just wish to thank my two patrons, NB Hollywood and Nagair898. Thank you both ever so much for your continued support of my content. It really does help me continue to produce these videos. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So the M1A2 Abrams is the last in the line of the heavy American Western Alliance tanks in Cold War. It is probably one of the most popular lines in Cold War, as the Abrams is as iconic in modern day tank warfare as, say, the Tiger tank was in World War II. So I think that does make it, like I said, a very, very popular choice. Usually I would start by talking about the battle earn rates, but because it is a tech tree vehicle and not a premium tank, of course, those earn rates are, well, ordinary. They are just stuck at 100% as opposed to any other additional bonus. What I can talk about, however, is the cost of the tank, which is of course in silver. So well, with this being the last tank in the line for the American heavies in Western Alliance, this is a very, very, very expensive tank. So if you wish to own this tank, assuming you've worked your way up the tech tree, of course, it will cost you 10,090,000 silver to purchase this vehicle. So that is, of course, an enormous amount of silver to have to fork out for a vehicle. So keep that in mind, of course. Make sure that you play your premium tank so that you can build up your silver reserves nicely. So, getting straight into it, let's take a look at the key statistics. So, starting with the gun, of course, the standard rounds offer 592mm of penetration, the premium rounds offer 654mm of penetration, and the heat rounds offer 600mm of penetration. Each and every single one of those rounds will do 535 damage alpha, so no variation there in terms of damage dealt, quite weirdly, which would really lead me to suggest that there really is no point in using the heat rounds, especially in Era 3 when there is so much spaced armor that will just interrupt the effectiveness of those rounds. Moving on from there, the rate of fire, again of course without any influencing factors, is 8.57 rounds per minute. That is actually extremely good, I must say. The reload time is just 7 seconds, which can of course be buffed with equipment, crew steals, and if you wish, consumables. The aim time is just 2 seconds, and the accuracy is a very, very impressive 0.22. From there, let's take a look at the gun depression. So the gun depression for this tank is just 9 degrees, and the elevation is 20 degrees. So quite impressive there. You're going to be able to shoot just about anything you want, and you're going to be able to effectively fight on ridge lines. So it's going to prove itself to be an extremely versatile tank in that regard. From there, let's take a look at the engine. So starting off with my favourite statistic of all when it comes to the engines, there is a 10% fire chance. Now, 10% fire chance, which of course can be negated with the appropriate crew skills, or indeed, of course, as viewers of my channel will know, a fire extinguisher. I do currently run a premium fire extinguisher on this tank, despite the fact that it is only, as just mentioned, a standard chance of 10% fire chance. I do find that I was being set on fire quite often, so that is a bit dynamic, I would say. I do switch between a premium fire extinguisher, a standard fire extinguisher, and even a hole patch kit. So yeah, you do you, of course, as ever. At the moment, that's what I'm rocking, so you know, you do you, like I say. The top forward speed of the M1A2 is an impressive 67.6 kilometers an hour, and the top reverse speed is also very impressive 38.6 kilometers an hour. The fully upgraded engine offers horsepower of 1,675, which gives it a 26.56 horsepower to ton ratio. I will include a little cheat sheet on the screen here so you can see currently what the statistics of my tank is as it sits in the garage, so you can see the vision range and the still concealment perhaps a little bit more effectively, as the garage sort of display for that particular statistic tends to be a little bit more easily understood than the stat sheet. So from there, I'm just going to show you an armor overview. So very similar to some of the previous tank reviews that I've done recently, this tank has an awful lot of different sort of individual, usually quite small armor modules. So I'm just going to breeze through this relatively quickly. I won't name every single individual piece, but there you can see sort of an overview of the entirety of the M1A2 Abrams. And now let's just make our way through, starting from the thinnest armor, moving slowly up through the different individual pieces to the thickest parts. So you can see here that there is an awful lot of spaced armor. So at the back of the turret back there, the tracks come in at 30 millimeters quite nicely. You can then see that there's some internal hull armor as well, also at 30 millimeters. The back of the turret again having a bit more relatively thin armor, but it all adds to the spaced armor, ultimately giving this tank an enormous amount of protection, particularly against missiles from the front. You'll be able to see in this overview as well how incredibly well armoured the turret is, and also the lower plate of this tank. You definitely do not want to be aiming at the lower plate of the M1A2 Abrams. It sounds rather counterintuitive compared to a lot of other tanks where traditionally the lower plate tends to be the weak part. But bizarrely enough, on this tank you sort of want to aim at the upper plate if you can. If you can angle down on it a little bit, then so much the better, as it is relatively thin, a little bit further back towards the turret on the upper plate. But yes, that is definitely the weak part overall from the front at least. By no means is this tank impervious to missiles. Of course, you can still deal some serious damage to it with missiles, usually from the back or the sides, of course, but you can see there that the front of the turret has such an enormous amount of really thick armor. So yeah, best leave the turret alone if at all possible. But there we are, that is the overview of the armor of the M1A2 Abrams. Hopefully you can see here the strong points and the weak points, and you can adapt your playstyle accordingly. So moving on from the armor, let's now take a look at the equipment. So you can see from the little graphic on the screen just here that I am running on this tank the Spool Liner, the advanced loader, and also the traction system. So the reason for my choices here, starting with the advanced loader, because it's nice and easy to explain away this one. Well, of course, I'm going to be able to throw more shells at the enemy that much quicker. So naturally, it makes sense, of course, to further complement this tank's already impressive DPM with a 10% increase in that. So it just made sense to do that. The next one, Spool Liner. So I've chosen the Spool Liner on the Abrams here, the M1A2, because it is incredibly good at ramming other tanks. In fact, until the Israeli line came out, with the Macavers. The M1A2 was the best tank for ramming other tanks in Era 3. I think that crown is now with the Macavers, but the M1A2 is still certainly no slouch when it comes to ramming into other enemy tanks. Finally, the traction system. Well, that really is just to complement the ramming ability of this tank. It doesn't really like turning terribly well, as I've mentioned before, I think. So really I've added this more for the 10% buff to the chassis and hull rotation speed as opposed to the max speed. Just because I think it really needs that sort of extra bonus to try and help it be a little bit more agile on the battlefield. So yeah, that is my equipment loadout for this tank. Moving on from the equipment, let's take a look at the consumables. So I know you can see it in the gameplay, but here it is on the screen as a little graphic as well. So my current loadout for this tank, again, is sort of dynamic. It does change a little bit, but currently I am running the enhanced repair kit, the standard med kit, and also the enhanced fire suppressor or fire extinguisher. So I think the premium repair kit sort of speaks for itself, really. The med kit, I just find that it's better to have that about. Of course, if your driver dies on this tank, then that is quite punishing, because the handling just isn't there to begin with. So if you lose your driver, then you really are just, well, only ever going to head in a straight line. You know, you're never going to be turning. And the fire suppressor, well, are you surprised? Do I really need to explain that? There it is, no explanation needed. I think that is, that really does just speak for itself as far as I'm concerned. So moving on from there, let's now take a look at the crew skills. So I have included a graphic on the screen. It is cut straight from the garage view, because it's in a nice, neat line just here. So basically the crew skills that I currently have on this tank are Sixth Sense, Rapid Loading, Born Leader, Controlled Impact, Rapid Aim, Steady Aim, and Run and Gun. So I've really tried to enhance this tank's ability to be a bit more effective whilst on the move. So Controlled Impact, again, it complements the Spool Liner. I've really gone for that just because, again, this tank is so incredibly good at ramming other tanks, so it just made sense to go for that. I've tried to increase the turret rotation speed, just so when I am on the move, I am able to sort of shoot and scoot, so to speak. And that sort of goes hand in hand with Run and Gun, which could easily have been called Shoot and Scoot, I suppose. But yeah, everything else sort of speaks for itself, really. I think perhaps the other ones did as well. But my crew skills are, again, relatively dynamic, because for the most part I do use Cold War as a training ground for my crew. Just because I'm spending most of my time in Cold War at the moment. And also there's some really, really good premium tanks in Cold War for training crew. So the reason why I've mentioned that is just because my crew skills tend to change. They are far from optimal, because, well, if I wanted this tank to be optimal, I would of course have a 9 skill crew on board instead of 7. So that's because this tank is training the crew as I grind the tank. So, all in all, I would say that the M1A2 Abrams is a fantastic tank. It's, of course, quite the grind to get it, because it is a tech tree tank. As mentioned, it is the very last tech tree tank in the Western Alliance American line, for the heavies at least. So, this is where perseverance will definitely pay off. The M1A2, the M1A1 are both absolutely fantastic tanks. I think for the most part, this line has been quite good. There have been some highs and lows. It's my personal opinion that the M47 wasn't so great. I know that some people really dislike the M60 as well. But then you've got some real gems like the M60A3 and the M60A2, of course. Both of those are tremendous tanks. So if you haven't already started this line, or if you're otherwise sort of stagnating, I guess, on the line, I really do urge you to continue, or at least start it, depending on where you are, because it really is such a great line. There's a lot of people out there, I think, that really are quite fond of the M1A2 Abrams. Yeah, it definitely holds one of the highest positions in Era 3, in my opinion. I know that the top spot is very hotly contested, which is why I'm deliberately avoiding sort of placing the crown on the #1 Era 3 tank, though some of you may have heard my fondness for the Chinese line in Era 3. So anyway, that is it for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much for watching. Please do check out the links in the description box below. Amongst other things, you will find a link to my Patreon page, where if you wish you can throw a little bit of support my way for making these videos. Even if it's just like $1 or $2 a month, you know, something relatively modest like that, I would just be hugely appreciative of that. And well, you get your name mentioned at the start of each video I make. And the other link that I'd really like you to take a look at is, of course, the link to my Twitch channel. I have been streaming on there a little bit more frequently, so I mean recently as well with the Monster Mash mode. Yeah, it's been good fun. So yeah, if you want to tag along to that and have a look and you know, enjoy me making a bit of a muppet of myself in real time, then feel free to join me on Twitch. But with that all being said, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.